Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea and let's talk some boxing. Now, Daniel Dubois gets back to winning ways with his victory over Bogdan Dinu in the second round. Now, Dinu put up a bit of resolve in the first round and the second round, and leading up to the stoppage, he was catching shots quite well, but it was Daniel Dubois who was trying to open him up and lead him onto that right hand, and as Dinu was going back to the ropes, he threw a shot and Dubois slipped it and then threw his right hand, and that ultimately saw the end for Bogdan Dinu. Very well set up, and as I said, Bogdan Dinu was catching shots quite well, but that was part of Daniel Dubois' plan to get him to open up, to get him to throw something back. And as soon as he does, that spelled the end for Bogdan Dinu because he landed the shot that led to the finish. So Dubois back to winning ways, and he looked elated after the stoppage came. 2 rounds and he's WBA interim world champion and now mandatory to Trevor Bryan. Now Trevor Bryan is WBA regular champion, Manuel Charr is apparently champion in recess to that belt. Then of course Anthony Joshua is WBA super champion. Now Daniel Dubois is mandatory to Trevor Bryan, not Anthony Joshua, so he's mandatory to that regular belt, and that could quite possibly be his next fight. So it's quite good management, I would imagine, because he's now WBA interim champion coming off of a loss to Joe Joyce, getting back to winning ways, but he's in that position of not having to fight someone like Anthony Joshua next because, let's be real, he's not ready. After having that test against Joe Joyce, it proved he just wasn't ready yet to move to that level. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him losing to Joe Joyce and understanding his level to see what he needs to work on to get back to a perhaps Joe Joyce fight again. I mean, that's the whole point, learning and understanding what needs to be done in order to get to that level. Daniel Dubois is no longer undefeated, and that doesn't matter. He had the fight, and that proved that he wasn't ready, so what he can do now is rebuild. The problem could be if he were to fight someone like Bogdan Dinu, then go in straight with Anthony Joshua, becoming mandatory to the super belt. Then that would be a problem because he hasn't had chance to rebuild and learn the necessary things to get him ready for AJ, because he tried to move it to Joe Joyce, which was European level, and he came unstuck. The good thing about this is he's not mandatory to AJ, he's mandatory to Trevor Bryan. So Trevor Bryan would be a good fight for him, another learning fight, but still he does need that in-between fight, just as Sam Jones said in the build-up to the Joe Joyce fight. He said that Daniel Dubois has not had that in-between fight. And he still hasn't. I mean, I know Joe Joyce, I guess you could say, was that, but it was jumping too far from the opponents he had previously faced. And that is why his next move is very important. It's okay if he goes for Trevor Bryan next, because I don't think that Trevor Bryan is really a world beater. He's an adequate fighter, but I wouldn't say he has the ability to do to Daniel Dubois what Joe Joyce did. I mean, if you look at the punch that landed on Bogdan Dinu, you have to wonder, what is Joe Joyce's chin made of? Because he took right hand after right hand from Dubois and stood up to the power. Dubois is very heavy-handed, so against Trevor Bryan, I believe that the power, the speed, the movement, the positioning, and also just the relentlessness of Daniel Dubois would probably be too much, so I'd pick Daniel Dubois to beat Trevor Bryan. The important thing is what he does after that fight. Who does he go for? Does he go and fight other fighters who are on a similar level to Trevor Bryan? Well, that would be a mistake in my opinion. I think that he could then move on. Maybe have someone like a Charles Martin, then he can start moving up the levels. Maybe then he can move on to someone like, say, Martin Bakole, maybe Otto Wallin, maybe even Joe Joyce after that, but he is a few fights away from getting that kind of opportunity. Hughie Fury is a good fight that could be out there for Daniel Dubois, an all-British showdown. There are options for him, but he does need to get that experience somehow, not just jumping from one level to another, because I do believe that Daniel Dubois is good enough if he has the necessary fights at the right time. Now, that could lead us to the question, was Joe Joyce too soon? Should he have been in there? Well, I think that it was perhaps one fight too soon, but I don't really see a problem with it because I don't see a problem with putting a fighter in that kind of situation to see how they handle it. He handled himself quite well, he wasn't out of place in there with Joe Joyce. It was just unfortunate that he couldn't really find a remedy for that jab, and that's what led to the stoppage. So he has proven that he can stick it around that level. He just needs to be able to adjust in fights to take something like that jab away and make the necessary adjustments when something like that jab is constantly landing. Those are things that he will be learning at this stage of his career. Let's remember, the guy's only 23 years old. He's a heavyweight as well. They develop a lot later. So he's still 2 or 3, maybe 4 years away from his best. So he can have some great fights, great learning fights to prepare him for a Tyson Fury, an Anthony Joshua, a Joe Joyce again. He is a while off taking those fights, but there is plenty of time for him to build and get ready for that kind of opportunity. It is important that in the meantime, he has the right fights at the right time. Also, what that shows is that Daniel Dubois is willing to take a risk. He's willing to get in there with Joe Joyce or anyone really. He's willing to step up. He's not bothered about putting his undefeated record on the line. He just wants the biggest fights, and that is very important to see when he takes something like a Joe Joyce fight, even though maybe he is not ready, but still, he wants to go there anyway. Anyway guys, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.